Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Miracle Larry podcast. I'm Dr. Jack Cush, joined by best friend since kindergarten, Lawrence Kelly. Larry, how are you?
I'm good, Jack. I'm a little under the weather today, but all in all, I'm good.
You know, COVID is still out there and it's really mild. So having a scratchy throat and, you don't have to lose your smell and go into the ICU like you know who.
Yeah.
COVID is actually really mild these days. So not that I'm wishing that upon you again, but just reminding the audience that it's become much more of a mild thing. Today, a special episode. We have two unique individuals who were part of an amazing movement in the pandemic in New York City early, beginning in March and April. We're joined by physician assistant Erica Krause, who comes to us from North Carolina, and uh, ER nurse Scott Wood, who comes to us from Dallas, Texas. Larry, you know these people. Why?
Well, Jack, this is going to be it for me. Um, a pretty remarkable episode because I haven't seen these two since they came to New York early, and I we should be having dinner and a cocktail and sharing and catching up. So I guess we're going to be doing that a little bit today on the podcast. But Erica and Scott were part of, as you said, Jack, that movement of volunteer nurses and PAs and healthcare workers that came to New York early in the pandemic when they knew nothing of what they were getting themselves into. We all knew nothing about this virus, and they came into the eye of the storm. So I would like Jack. I mean, if you can ask the first question, but I would just like to know what was in their head and motivated them early to even think about coming to New York from North Carolina and Texas. And Erica, hi, Erica.
Hi.
It's been a while. Erica,
Before
go ahead,
before
Jack.
Larry, before you joined, Erica said the one thing that's new about this is that she's never really heard you talk because she saw you in just getting off the respirator and
I whispered, and
right.
I had to, yeah, Erica, was I trached when I first came to you? Did I have to use that plastic piece?
You were, I think you were trached, but you weren't talking with the plastic piece, right? You were just whispering. You had just come off the vent,
Oh, okay, all right. See,
so you were just started breathing.
All right,
let
let's
me
go with
explain. Jack, let me explain real fast. I started at Mount Sinai Morningside, the ICU. I went to palliative care at Morningside. I was transferred there. I went from palliative care downtown to Beth Israel, where I was literally the first patient. And that's where these two happened to get assigned when they came to New York was Mount Sinai Beth Israel on East 16th Street. And I'm who they ran into or who had to care for, which is
okay.
quite
A little bit
amazing
a
to
little bit of
me.
clarification. Also, Larry was in Mount Sinai and was actually being moved as they were expanding their ICUs from one ICU to another ICU to another ICU, all on a vent, all unresponsive and on fentanyl and all these drugs, and was a horrible mess. And they kept moving him, and this was very distressing to his family and to me. And I wasn't sure. And what we learned later is that they just couldn't take care of. They had even more critical people that kept coming in, and so they were moving things around. And at one point, he had just opened his eyes, was still on a vent, meaning he was intubated on a mechanical ventilator, and not at all out of the wood. And they transferred him downtown to another hospital, and it's called LTAC, a long-term respiratory facility for people on ventilators, which they converted the Beth Israel Hospital to this function. And that's where he met Erica and Scott. Let's get into Eric and Scott, why would you sign up to go to New York City from North Carolina and from Tennessee into the middle of a war zone called the pandemic? Was it because the New York governor, Cuomo, was on the news with daily updates, and the New York mayor were asking for volunteers to come to New York to help out? Was that why you went, or why did you go? Erica, why don't you go first?
Okay, so a couple of reasons. The maybe simplest reason. So, yes, I saw on TV, I knew what was going on in New York. I knew that it was absolutely insane, running rampant, horrific. But here in North Carolina, we were barely seeing COVID. Talking that late March, early April, barely seeing COVID, a few cases, here and there. We were in a shutdown, and something crazy happened in the ER, which is that nobody came to the ER at all, ever, hardly.
Wow.
I don't know if they were scared of getting COVID. I don't know if because people weren't out running errands and whatnot, they didn't pop into the ER to say, hey, but our volumes were horrendously low. Like I said, I mean, obviously the super people who were sick, people were still having heart attacks, things like that. They came, but generally speaking, I mean, our volumes just decreased dramatically. So what that meant for me was, so I work for a staffing company that staffs emergency departments. I'm not a hospital employee. And so my company was sending out emails all the time. What shifts do you want to come off this month? Leave early when you can, call people, tell them to come in late. How many shifts can we take you off this month? And my answer was none, because, I had bills to pay.
Right.
So, but that, it kept happening. We'd get sent home early. Be asked to come in late, things like that. And I was, kind of getting nervous, financially at that point anyway. And then my company, so some head honcho at my company is friends or went to med school with some head honcho at Mount Sinai. And they started kind of talking. This took a couple weeks, but they were like, hey, you're not using your people in New York or North Carolina. Can I have your people in New York? And so they kind of started working some things out and figuring out how this would work. And eventually my company kind of made this announcement of, they asked, number one, does anybody just want to furlough for just come off, stop working for a whole month? And the benefit, they would pay your insurance. The second option was if you want to stop working, kind of indefinitely and go to New York, with the caveat that they could call us back at any time. So I signed up for that, said that I would come off the schedule here and I would go to New York. So number one, the reason was, I needed a job. But number two, it was hard for me to sit here and, knowing that I'm not that I think anybody has any skills for COVID, but I'm a medical professional. I have an ability to treat people. I felt like I was like sitting on my thumbs and just watching, the world blow up around me. I felt like I couldn't just sit here and do nothing. I didn't know that I could do anything in New York, but I figured I need to at least try. And the last thing was when, they were talking about, we need people in New York. And, there was talks, even with my coworkers, people, I'm not doing that. I would never go to New York. And, some people did have fears about going to New York and would they come back? I was single. I have no children. I felt like I was in a place to go. So I went.
Jack, one thing real fast. Erica is originally from Iceland.
Yes, I'm from Long Island.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was too part of another little personal connection too, that I felt New York is my home state. I lived there for 24 years, and that was part of too. I felt like I couldn't sit here and watch New York specifically crumble, so to speak, without going to do something for my state.
So I want to underscore something that at the time, this is the beginning of the shutdown, there were a lot of jobs lost in all of society,
Mm-hmm.
but especially in healthcare. A lot of clinics closed and a lot of people were furloughed. And so while that might have been an impetus for Erica to make the jump, she was also had this amazing, altruism and bravery to, to jump in and want to be the right person at the right time. and make a difference. And Lord knows that ended up being true. They did pay her to go. They flew her there. They put her in a hotel, and then made her work like a dog and manage people like Larry. Scott, again, why did you make the jump? And tell us how you got there.
So what's funny is I was actually kind of in the process of changing jobs to begin with, like going from one, I'm an ER nurse by trade. So about the middle of March, we started getting like some sicker COVID patients. I mean, their x-rays would change within an hour, hour and a half, like would come in talking, and then by an hour and a half in their treatment, they're like getting intubated just because their disease was progressing so quickly. I had actually was about to start at another hospital, and several friends of mine were like, oh, we're traveling, like we're going to Illinois, we're going to different states. And I was like, okay, so I kind of put some feelers out there. And I had contacted a travel nurse company, and they were like, oh, we have some contracts in New York. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I don't mind going. I'm single. I don't have any children. So I was like, I have family, but that's really my only connections per se. And so I was like, sure, like I'll go. I was like, I want to see what they are doing there that maybe we could be doing here, to see if there's what's working there that I'm like, hey, maybe we should try this down here in Texas. Like, and healthcare does move quickly with like treatments sometimes, not always, but I was like, if I could see things that they were doing there that were being successful for patients, I was 100% on board for that. And I was hoping I could bring some things back to Texas to assist with patient care here.
So you drove yourself, right? You did not fly. They did not fly you.
I did. I rented a vehicle and drove up there. I think I drove over 2 days. That's a very long drive. Not going to lie.
Right.
Tennessee's terrible to drive through. No offense to anybody that lives in Tennessee. Just takes a hot minute to get through that state. It really does.
So did you both bring things back? I mean, you were both there for what looked like at least 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks. Did you bring back knowledge and know-how, and did that help you when you return home to your next job? Scott?
So it was like bits and pieces. It was like kind of the modality of like medications that they were using. Just it was little tidbits like that. By the time I had actually met Larry, he was already off the vent. So I saw the kind of after effects. And as an ER nurse and probably as an ER provider, we don't see, after they leave the emergency room, we don't see patients again. So we don't ever know what happens to them, which is sometimes a struggle for people. Because, I mean, in an hour or two, like you can get to know somebody and like get to know their family. And it's like, what happened? Like what happens to that person after they leave? And so I'm always kind of curious sometimes with some of my patients, just because there's lots of interesting disease processes out there.
How do you know that it's really him? I mean, he doesn't sound the same. He doesn't look the same. He was a hairy, sweaty, frail mess. And we're not sure it's the same, Larry. How do you know it's the same?
I watched his kids get married. His kids have kids.
Yeah, there you go.
Followed him on Facebook the past 3 years. I may not remember him, but I remember Jackie and Jess. They look the same.
Okay, thought I could pull that off here. Erica, did you bring stuff home that helped you?
Jack, real fast. I don't know if we did. And if we did, I apologize. But this is Erica Crause and Scott Wood. I just wanted to give their full names.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, when I came back, it kind of was, good timing that I wasn't needed in New York anymore and things were ramping up here. And I went right back to working, full time. And my boss, would kind of make the joke of, great, we've got a COVID expert now. COVID is running rampant here. People are super sick here. And we've got an expert. And I told him, what I think I learned about COVID is, like that show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Where, the rules are made up and points don't matter. That's how I felt about COVID. The rules were made up. We would one day be like great. We put everybody on this drug and everybody got better. And we're like, we did it, hallelujah, we've got it. Put everybody on the drug. The next day, that drug didn't work anymore. And then it was like, well, let's try this. Steroids, I remember, was a big thing at one point that we thought, we were saving everybody with steroids, and then it stopped working. I think the one thing I did take back was proning. They weren't doing a lot of proning here. And also, I had half of the respiratory therapists I work with were pretty good. Well, actually, probably most of the respiratory therapists. It was the other doctors. I had a hard time convincing or trying to explain to people. I think the one thing I did learn is to not intubate everybody right away. I think that was one thing that we kind of saw, was that a lot of, in the beginning, it was like, intubate everybody. Their SATs are low. They're in respiratory distress. Let's intubate them. And then we found out they weren't coming off the vent. And learned that if you maybe hang out a little bit, we came up with that term, that happy hypoxic. Realized you don't have to tube everybody right away, and the ones you didn't tube did a little bit better. So that was kind of, one thing that I was trying to be the one to say, hold up, let's not, that's what I do as the ER provider, right? I see low SATs, I'm gonna stick a tube down you. And I had, to be like, wait a second, let's back up and tell my colleagues and the hospitalists, and, let's not do this. But like Scott said, I'll put the tube down you, and then I'm out after that. Typically,
let me explain to the audience, happy hypoxic and low SATs. That means your oxygen levels are low, but it's not critical. The patient still is sustaining, and that you don't rush in and put a tube down their throat and put them on a ventilator. So, you both got to New York around the same time and went to work at the LTAC unit in Beth Israel, met Larry. I think, Erica, you were there probably a week ahead of Scott. So describe your first week with Larry Kelly. Do you remember much of that?
Oh yeah, I remember. So I'm the one that did his admission to the LTAC. So the way, it worked, like any other transfer, we had to have a physician acceptance into the LTAC. So the physician we worked with, and that changed on a daily basis, but the physician that we worked with that day got a call from a physician in the ICU, I think at Morningside, described the patient. She said, yes, we accept this patient. And then she presented the patient to the team of PAs, and I got elected I was going to do the admission once this patient comes here. So that's where we got our information from, was, the physician in the ICU. I got the rundown. I got everything I needed, his history, things like that. And that was typically how it went. And then we, would do our admission from there. So not long after Larry actually arrived at the LTAC, I got a phone call, and I don't remember if it was from a resident or the attending in the ICU, but it was somebody from Morningside called. And I thought, that was weird, because I think we admitted maybe 3 or 4 patients that day. And so for, again, each patient, we got one phone call just to our attending physician. So they wanted to speak specifically to the provider that was taking care of Larry in the LTAC. And I thought, we already got a report. You already had an acceptance. He's here. What more? You don't need anything else. And they called me. They said, I just want to run down, kind of his course here and things like that. And I said, well, yeah, I've gotten a report. And I want to say it was a few months ago. She said, no, I was the one taking care of him here. You're the one taking care of him there. I want to speak to you. And she kind of hesitated for a second, and she said, there's something special about this one. She said, I want to make sure that I really want you to understand what his course has been like here, so that you have everything you need, moving forward. And he was the only patient that we got extra report on. They said, there's something special about this patient. So again, for me personally, now, he was my first patient, like I said, and part of my report was, this man, he's got 2 daughters, he's got a wife, they need to be updated. He's got this friend, Dr. Cush, he needs to be updated. These are the people who are allowed to call, this and that. And Larry, I think you're a couple years, maybe just a little bit older than my dad. Jess is maybe a little bit younger than me, but I have a sister named Jackie. And for some reason, the first thing that popped into my head was just my family. My dad had been in a hospital in Virginia just a few days before I left. Actually, that was kind of one of my final contingencies, was I'll leave only once I made sure my dad was out of the hospital. Not with COVID, a heart issue, but still, so this was kind of fresh. And I just in my mind, that could be my dad. These girls could be my sisters, that could be my mom. And it just was just a little extra, felt like this could be my family. And what would I want somebody to do for my family? The people would make fun of me a lot. So, in this LTAC, we had these glass doors. So I could see into the room and see the monitor, see the patient. But typically as a PA, I would only go in the room once, maybe twice a shift. Whereas a nurse was in there, pretty much all day long. If not in and out, we were gowning up, 7 layers of PPE and things like that. It was a huge process to go in and out of a room. So typically, a nurse would go in or stay in for a long time. We would kind of stand at the door. We'd be writing on the doors. We'd be like miming to the nurses, like, move this, check that, can you give him this? And they would find me just kind of standing outside Larry's door, just watching the monitor, looking at his vitals. And people would say, oh, she's checking on her dad again. Look, she's just watching her dad again. So that was, kind of from the beginning, I just felt this kind of personal connection. And I was told he was special from the beginning.
So you're the second, wait, Larry, you're the second person that said that to us and to me, that when I asked, tell me about how you know Larry or how you met Larry, they all said, Jessica said just the same thing. Oh, I know Larry Kelly. I admitted him to the blank.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that just gives me chills just to hear that. Just chills.
Jack, I do a lot of speaking informally and formally now. And I always tell stories about these two. That, like I said, this is a strange episode because I have so many things to ask these two. But when they saw me, that was in that unit. Mentally where I was, I had so many delusions down when I was with them. That's the place where I had the most. I had to piece what was real, what was not real, whether I was alive, whether I was not alive. And let me tell a quick story with Erica, because how she's important to my family. She is the first one that set up FaceTime with my family. And that was my first connection to them. And the first time wasn't actually very pleasant for me because it was my entire family on Zoom and I didn't even know what Zoom was. So there's 8 faces like facing me. And it's the first time I ever saw something like that. And I thought maybe this is death. Maybe death is my family screaming at me for eternity.
On a Zoom call.
So I got off that first call really fast. But that was Erica that set that up. And Erica, I have to ask you one question and then we'll get to Scott. But my first question, story I tell, is I had just started speaking quietly, whispering, raspy, and I had just started getting consciousness. You were there, and I said, I asked you, I said, what day it was, and she had told me at the time, I believe it was the end of May 28th, 27th, something like that, and so in my mind, I had to, okay, now I have to do math. Okay, I went in. This is the first time I realized how long I had been there. And I was like, wow, okay, 2 months gone. Wow, geez, where'd they go? And I said to Erica, I believe, ask me if this is true. I said, do I still have COVID? And you said, no, you don't. You came down close to me and you whispered, no, you don't. And I said, I'm paralyzed, Jack, from the neck down, or barely moving, barely speaking, barely thinking. I turned to her and I said, I kicked COVID's ass. And you whispered to me, yes, you did, Mr. Kelly. Did that happen?
Yeah, but you're still missing. There's one more line after that. So I think it must have been either the end of April or the beginning of May. Well, there's a couple things you told me. So that's the first day, you know, when you came to the LTAC that very first day, you had a fever, you were weaning off the methadone at that point. So, you know, and that's what, you know, and we just didn't know. You'd been sedated for so long, and we didn't know where your mental state was, where it would be. I think you followed some commands sometimes, you know, we weren't sure at that point. I did set up that.
But you were monitoring my cognition, right? Like that was your main concern, like
right.
where
Yeah,
I was
and
mentally, right?
throughout
Everything,
the day,
Larry.
people were
No, your
asking
breathing,
me.
your
Right, yeah.
chemistry.
We were still,
yeah, your
Everything.
brain. Yeah.
yeah. Your brain was one of the biggest questions that we weren't sure how that was going to recover. But I did set up that Zoom call. I remember, you know, also in the LTAC, things were a little calmer. I think most patients were fairly stable. It was really a watch and wait place. We were just kind of waiting to see what, you know, every patient in there would do. So the biggest thing that we did a lot of times was just talking to families, updating families. You know, we had, I'd say versus like a traditional ICU, we had plenty of time to be talking to families, making phone calls, this and that. So when I called Jackie and Dawn for the first time, Jackie was like, listen, if it's not, you know, too big of a deal, she said, you know, they told us at the other place we could set up a Zoom meeting, but we never really had time. If it's not a huge, I'm like, oh, we can do it today. You know, she was like, do you think in a few days we could? I said, we can do it today. You tell me when, and we'll make this happen. You know, we have nothing more to do here really than to set up Zoom meetings. We have all that time. So we did set that up. And so then, yes, when, you know, over a course of a few days, you know, your fever broke, you know, weaning off the methadone, things like that, you started to respond more, follow commands more. And I went in one day and they said, he's talking. So I had to go in. So I went in, you did ask me how long you'd been there, told me you kicked COVID's ass. And then you pointed to kind of this is where I say too, we had this conversation before about me being from Long Island. You pointed to, you had flowers and books and random gifts in your room. And you told me, you said, I have a lot of friends. I said, I see that clearly. And I think something had said on there, you were showing me kind of some different, this is from this, and, you know, pointed at some flowers. And I think it said from Sayville class of something, you know, and I said, Sayville, you said, yeah. You told me you were from Sayville, and I told you I was from Islip. And then, you know, I don't remember which point in the conversation, but this part that stuck out to me, you know, in this whole, you just woke up, you know, been here forever, kind of figuring out who you are, what you are. You looked at me and you said, I need a massage.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did. You said, I need a massage.
He went right to HR. Okay. And,
I said, no.
God, I didn't ask you that too. I didn't say that to you.
No.
Nope, you didn't ask.
I took it as you meant like you needed to you wanted to get out of there, go to a massage place, you know, have an actual massage therapist. That's how I took it. But, you know, kind of, I'm stiff.
Everything you're saying is coming back to me in pieces. I remember thinking, my God, I've told this later, that I wasn't supposed to be in the hospital. I was just coming for a massage. That was one of my delusions, that, you know, I don't know what happened to me here. I just came in for a massage.
They strapped you down.
That was delusional talk. You'll have to, it wasn't harassment.
No. No, I took it as you wanted to be discharged so you could go to get a massage.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be. That's crazy. I remember.
But it was interesting to me. I was like, well, I guess someone who's been laying in bed for 51 days. I mean,
the last question. I had a beard at that point, and I was really concerned about a razor at my home.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that I wanted this single edge. And I remember you standing by the bed, you were holding, and I'm telling Dawn where the single edge razor is. It's on the shelf in the bathroom. It's the gift from my son-in-law. And you went, well, I guess the cognition's okay. Did that happen? Or did I make that up too?
That I don't remember exactly, but that sounds like something I would say. I feel like I don't remember what it was about, but I feel like I remember talking to Dawn and saying something like, there was something that you had said that I was like, yep, his mental state is fine. You know, you said something that just seemed like a normal conversation.
So Scott, you came in the picture what sounds like maybe a week or so later. When you got him, was he intubated? Was he on an endotracheal tube, or not?
So we actually had a trach with a little cover, so he was able to speak. It was still kind of whispers. What's
Right.
odd about that is like it seems like from one week it was whispers, and the next week like his voice was like much stronger. Like you would better hear him. Just sometimes I have issues hearing, and they had machines in there to do negative pressure, so it was very loud in those rooms at all times.
Right.
And so I would remember that, like the first couple of times I'd seen him, like you really had to like lean into him, kind of listen to what he was whispering. But then it's like his voice was getting a little bit stronger every time I would see him, and I'm like, okay, good, good, he's improving. Like this is substantial improvement.
So he didn't ask you for a massage. What did he ask you for?
So I believe it was my very last day with Larry, and I think he was.
Can I tell that story, Scott? Hold on, before you jump to your last day, and Erica, don't be offended by this because this is just my memory. I looked at Scott Wood, that little red button that I had. I kept seeing staff walk past the door. I would press that button. No one came to help me. That's just what I remember. I'm not saying it's fact. I'm saying that. But Scott, every time I pressed that red button, he came into my room. And so real fast. And Scott, I think, Scott, this is a story I tell about you all the time. I was just starting to speak. I hadn't eaten anything in months, and I still wasn't allowed to. My speech therapist, I wasn't allowed to put anything in my mouth. Scott didn't know this. So I had said to Scott when he came in, I said, Scott, I need some Italian ice. And Scott went, what's that? And I remember saying, where are you from?
He's not from New York.
Where are you from? He goes, Texas. I went, what kind of state is that? They don't know what Italian ice is. I said, what kind of state? Is that true, Scott? That's right. So I described it to Scott. I said, Scott, you got to go out there and find a deli. I said, it's in little yellow cups. It's called Marinos. I said, please go get me some Italian ice. No, not thinking that he was. This man comes back and I said, I like rainbow, I like cherry, and I like watermelon. I said, he came back with a case of Marino's Italian ice, rainbow, cherry, and watermelon. He went outside the hospital and I wasn't allowed to eat anything. And I looked at him tentatively, like I knew he was going to say no, that I was just going to stare at it. I said, can I have one? And like sheepishly. And he said, yeah, sure. And he took one out. He fed me the whole thing. I said, can I have another one? And he took another one out. He said, Jack, all right, if you've ever been on a desert island starving, which is sort of what I was, to this day, that Italian ice was the greatest thing I put in my mouth in my life. It was so delicious. Scott, you did that. And then he tells me he's leaving,
Well, what he didn't tell you, Larry, is that they were sending him to Rikers Island for the crimes he committed while working as a nurse. That's why he had to make the quick exit.
I did actually get permission. I promise. I got permission first.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Oh yeah.
But if you didn't, I know back at the old place, I asked for ice chips and they wouldn't give me any, and I thought that my speech therapist was, a sadist. I was looking at her like, ice chips. What the hell is wrong with this woman? I said, I'm a dying, starving man here, and they won't give me ice chips. So when Scott gave me the Italian ice, I know he's thinking, this poor man wants an Italian ice. Who am I to deny this? But anyway, so Scott, you can talk about the last day. You can go ahead.
So I had actually gotten permission because I think I had actually given him a couple of like ice chips ahead of time, and I was like, he's tolerating his secretions, like he's not like coughing, he's not gagging on anything like that, and I was like, it's my last day. Is there any way possible that I could get this man some Italian ice? And they gave me permission. So I actually had ordered a couple of boxes just because I'm not from New York, I don't know where anything is. So I actually had it delivered to the hospital. Went downstairs, got all 3 boxes, like put his patient labels on there, put them in the freezer because I was like, these are Mr. Kelly's. Nobody else needs to eat them, like at all. I was like, they belong to him. But they were ever so gracious as to let me get them for you. So I was glad I was able to actually provide, like, it may, because I do actually talk about you with other patients, and I'm like, not like you, like your name or anything like that, but I talk about, I'm like, it's something small, but that may mean the world to somebody. It may mean like insignificant to somebody, but something just a little bit may go a million miles for that person. And it's just little things.
Scott, but when you told me you were transferring, you were going to Boston, and you came in, I cried, didn't I? We shared, like, I couldn't believe you were leaving because my perception of you was the only one that took care of my needs. Not Erica, you were gone by this point.
I was gone, yeah.
I know you were gone. But Scott was the only one and he's looking at me saying he's leaving me. And I'm like, no, you can't. I want to talk to somebody. There's somebody I have to talk to. Like, I was so dependent on Scott that it was devastating. And the irony was, I got transferred that evening. That's when I went to the rehab center and I demanded to take my case of Italian ice. And the nurses there said, oh, it'll melt. You can't take that. It'll melt. I said, what do you mean it'll melt? What do you mean? So they wound up getting that case of Italian ice anyway, because they wouldn't let me put it on the bottom of the cart when they were taking me to rehab. And Scott, I'm gonna share something, and I don't do it for ego. Did you pay me a really big compliment before you left and say, tell me if I made this up because it's possible, but you said, Mr. Kelly, I've been doing my job for 8.5 years, and you're one of my favorite patients. Did you say that to me before you left?
What's funny is I remember like talking to you, like in that instance, and I want to say it was something along those lines because I was like, it's different for ER nurses just because we have our patients for an hour or two. We don't see them that much. But when you're in that kind of setting that you were in, like you're with that patient for 12 hours a day. And I was like, just like interacting with you, just talking with you. I was like, I don't know. I was like, you're still to this day.
And I said, get the F out of here. And you said, no, seriously. I said, get the F out of here. I said, no, seriously. But my point is, whether you meant it or not, it was a wonderful thing to say to somebody who was where I was at that point. So, like you said, little things matter. It doesn't matter to me that I was your favorite patient. What matters is you said it and made me feel like I was, and that's really important. That's all.
So yeah. I want to ask you both, go ahead, Scott, you want to say something? Good.
Oh, so I will say I do mean it because after I left, like I consistently thought about you. Like, and what's funny is I had actually messaged your wife on Facebook, and I was like, I want to know what happens to Larry because I was like, I got like so like interested just in your case.
Because he gave me a massage.
No, he gave you Italian ice.
I didn't do that.
Your memory's not good. No, I want to ask you both, as you did leave Larry and go on to your next assignment, you must have told a story about Larry to someone else. Does anything come to mind, Scott, about what you told maybe another nurse or another? Again, you don't have to worry about HIPAA here. Larry signed all the papers. You're absolved of any crimes. But is there something you told another healthcare person or family member about? I had this patient.
So I mean, so what's funny is even like multiple years after, I still talk about Larry, like still taking care of Larry, and just like it was just such an impactful time, as well as taking care of him was just impactful to myself.
COVID.
Literally. And I do remember telling him, because he was telling me, he was like, I've lost so much weight. He's like, I feel like skinny now. He's like, I've lost so much weight. He was like, and I just feel so weak. And I said, this is going to sound really stupid, but I want you to just sit there and just pump your feet in the bed. I know it sounds dumb, but just do it. I said, because you're going to get those muscles moving in. I said, it's not going to be an instant thing, obviously. I was like, but you're going to have to kind of like build yourself back up. And I was like, and I do remember, like I told him, I was like, just sit there and pump your feet. Sit there and pump them. It's like, I know it may seem insignificant now, but I was like, it was just like little things. He would like ask something or tell me something, and I'm like, oh, like, let's try this.
But Scott and Erica, you got to look at my point of view. It's nothing is insignificant to me. Everything. I'm still here, and all those little things are connected to and COVID was historical, and you were in the heart of it, in the epicenter in New York, and I think it's stuff we'll never forget. We'll move on, but we'll never forget. And Erica, I saw you on Facebook refer to me as my miracle Larry, my miracle Larry.
I call you my favorite patient, my miracle Larry. Maybe I didn't say it to your face. I think I only got to speak to you like twice, but so the other thing, you talk about, speaking of Facebook and stuff. So while this was one of the hardest things for me being in New York, I've spent, 12 hours a day standing outside your door. And Jack, I promise I'll answer your question, but let me get to this part first. I spent 12 hours a day standing outside your door watching you. Just watching you on the phone with Dawn, on the phone with Jackie, on the phone with Jess, on the phone with Jack, and, listening to your family talk about you, listening to your family cry, listening to your family ask me, is he going to be okay? What's going to happen? What's, and always, I don't know. But just to tell them that, so I said, my favorite line from the Notebook is science only goes so far, then comes God. That's how I felt the whole time I was there with you. And, I didn't know what I was doing other than standing outside your door and just hoping for a miracle and praying for a miracle. But then I would go back to the hotel at night and I would sit there and I would scroll through Facebook and I would say my acquaintances on Facebook, a lot of people in North Carolina, like I said, nothing was happening here, which is one of the reasons why I left and went to New York. I was watching post after post after post. This is a hoax. COVID is a joke. Nobody's dying. Nobody's even sick. It's just the flu. It doesn't exist. Every myth, every, thing. And I would comment and I would have to take my phone from myself. Like you can't, I had like rage inside of me over this. And I would write, I have a woman you could speak to. I have a daughter you can speak to. I have a wife you can speak to. Why don't you tell, of course, never use names, but just said, I know a family you can speak to if you don't believe this is real, that nobody's dying, that nobody's hurt. This is affecting nobody. It's all it's doing is the government's trying to be in control. And I saw, I guess a couple months ago, it popped up in my Facebook memories that, I said something about, meanwhile, something about my favorite patient's family is, waiting just to see if he's ever going to wake up or walk out of here but you also say it's fake, like I've got some people you can speak to if you want to know how real it is.
It's infuriating. It's infuriating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I speak about. I Jack knows I sort of look at myself as the Elie Wiesel of COVID. I don't want people to wallow in it, but I don't want people to forget about it. It's, there are 1.2 million Americans who died. That's families.
Right.
That's families of someone who I speak. I think this, it's not, again, none of this is ego, but I speak for the dead. I want people to remember that I'm fortunate, but I was almost just a statistic in a history book down the road. Yeah. Anyway, but we did go through something historic. Go ahead, Scott.
So that is part of the stories though I tell about Larry. The biggest thing is like I said, that science only goes so far, and then comes God. Because I don't know people. I actually, maybe 6 months ago, was working in the ER, got a phone call. Our secretary said, "Hey, you have a phone call." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "Some lady who's looking for you specifically." I said, "A patient?" She said, "No, she's not a patient. She's in," and she named another state. Well, who is she and what does she want? Working in an ER, I'm busy. What? She said, "Well, she found you online. She found an article that you're mentioned in. And she said that her mother is on a ventilator, sick with COVID, and she wants to know, what did you do to get that man off a ventilator? Because she needs the miracle cure, whatever the miracle cure was, she wants to know." And I had to tell him that I have nothing. There was nothing. There's nothing I did. There's nothing. I mean, everything just, especially in those days, it was a miracle, and that's all it was. That there was nothing that, I did that got him off the ventilator.
It's everything you did. Think about it. It's what everything you did, everything Scott did, everything, the orderlies were doing. It was this amazing combined effort that was science driven, and inspired by, an unwillingness to give in. And, there weren't a lot of wins, but there were many like Larry, and not enough, but that still is, it really is everything that you did. And that's part of the miracle. It really is.
I do want to say to both of you that even with Jessica Montanaro and everybody who attended me, in my eyes, if I'm the only reason you went to New York and I'm alive with all the tragedy, it's, to me, it was totally worth it to come to New York. So it was
worth it.
Eternally grateful to both of you. What you did is what you did is so courageous. I don't know if I would have ever done that. I don't know if I would have come right into the eye of the storm, and not knowing how this was transmitted, what it actually did. And Erica, I'm right with you. The people that minimize COVID, or, I don't even want to get into it. Dr. Fauci in jail. My head explodes. My head explodes. It's I'm right with you. And that's what you have to sit back and take comfort in, that we know.
They're lucky they didn't see it. Yeah.
Right. So we should end right there because it's such a good ending. But I got to ask one more question of both of you. You were both the angels of mercy going into the eye of the storm. You had to leave your shift and go back to your hotel at night. What was New York City like for you going, at that time? Was it, the picture that
I wanted to ask that too. Good, Jack. Good question.
The picture that was painted was a really dark and dank thing, except for the pots banging at 6 p.m. But do you remember anything, Scott, about New York City as you went home that night?
So my hotel was actually near Times Square. Like, it was dead. Like, there was nobody out on the streets. I think about the only people that I did see were homeless or like mental illness folks. Because I did get yelled at several times because I would take the subway to the hospital. So there were some interesting times coming home because it was dark, and I was like, oh, I don't want to die here. Not gonna lie, don't want to get like stabbed, anything crazy like that. But I was always safe. But it was
Wow.
eerie. It was almost like being like in a zombie apocalypse because there's nobody out on the streets, and it's just weird. It's weird for New York.
It was very weird, Scott. And there's a picture, Jack, of Erica on Facebook. I think she took it when she was leaving New York, but Times Square, empty. She's lying in the middle of the road.
On Broadway.
Just her lying in the middle of the road in this Times Square view down for half a mile. No one, not a soul. And it's a great, great shot. It's a great, great shot. And I look at it, it just, it's an iconic shot. Actually.
Every Long Island kid has always wanted to be in Times Square in the middle of the road like that, except we envisioned at New Year's Eve surrounded by 8 million people who were drunk.
Right.
Oh my God.
Scott, were you born and raised in Texas, by the way? Were you born and raised in Texas?
Yep. Been here all my life.
Eric, what do you remember?
Is Scott a Cowboys fan? This is important.
I don't watch football.
Okay, fine.
Punch the bullet right there, Scott. Good move.
Yeah. So, growing up on Long Island, I've been to the city plenty of times. I don't like going anymore. That was, the first thing on the plane. I think I flew into JFK I went from Raleigh to Atlanta, from Atlanta to JFK. They had to redistribute us. There was like 7 of us on the plane, and they had to redistribute us, put us in certain spots to make the, weight even out because there was so little weight on the plane. That was insane. But, then being in the car, from the airport to the hotel, I took so many pictures. Just my hotel was in Times Square as well. And just looking out the window, it was a Thursday night. And I just remember thinking, I couldn't believe it. Same thing the next morning. It might've been a Wednesday night and Thursday morning, 7:00 Thursday morning, not a car in Times Square. I've never have I ever. And I mean, like Scott said, that's exactly what I thought. It was creepy. It was eerie. It was like a zombie apocalypse, a rapture. It was an odd feeling. I will say though, I did enjoy, as much as I say I hate New York City. I would walk a lot, and I had a couple other friends that I met at the Atlanta airport. Actually, I hate New York City. I don't want to go there. I don't want to walk around and all the people, and it's.
First off, I just want to let you know my daughters were never allowed to use that word growing up. So, save your hate for somebody.
I strongly dislike.
Save your hate for somebody who's trying to kill you. Like hate COVID. That's good. Okay.
Yes. I don't
hate my city. Don't hate my city.
I know. I don't enjoy going to New York City. I will be there next year, by the way, though we're planning a trip for next year. I always come up with some, country friend here who needs me to take him to New York City. So next year it'll be my boyfriend. And, but I did enjoy it. We'd have one day off or so. And, we would do things like delis were open. Scott, you would know if we were there at the same time. I brought in bagels every morning. I had to stop at the bagel store around the corner. I brought in bagels for the whole unit every morning.
He doesn't know Italian ice. You think he knows bagels?
No. But we would go to a deli, get a sandwich, go to a park, go sit at the park. So it actually, I enjoyed New York City a whole lot better with nobody in it. But it still was
You'll
creepy.
never get that again. Anyway.
No, never. I hope. Yeah.
Erica, real fast. My daughter Jackie had to get out, and she moved to Buffalo. So my wife drove up with her and left the car there with Jackie and took a plane back. And the plane she took back, she was the only passenger on the entire plane. That's the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
She's flying. She's the only passenger flying back from Buffalo on the plane when she took Jackie up in the heart of. Anyway. I just reminds me of what you said.
The airports were creepy. The plane,
eerie. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank Erica Crause and Scott Wood for this fabulous reunion and discussion of their view of the Miracle Larry story. This has been really wonderful. Thank you.
Can I say one thing, Jim?
Yeah, please, Larry, close it.
When you two, please let's get together, and the three of us, you got to come into the city and let me take you out to dinner. But the next time you're both coming in at the same time, let's keep in touch. There is Facebook, and
Yeah.
because I just scratched the surface of stuff I want to talk to you two about. So anyway, thank you both. Thank you both for doing this. God bless you. Stay healthy, stay young, stay happy, and don't hate my city, Erica.
I won't. I'll come back.
Okay. Jack.
Bye all.
Thank you, Jack.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.